Welcome back to what could possibly be the most difficult review for me to do. Not difficult because the book or the story is complicated or deep or hard to explain, just because I grew up with this movie. To me, the story that is the Neverending Story is the movie. When you watch a movie dozens of times and it is laser printed onto your brain that this is the story. Reading the book is quite weird. It's a little like when I read Jurassic Park. I saw Jurassic Park in theaters, have seen it dozens and dozens of times, and then when you read the book, you're like, okay, this is fine, but it's not the story. This is not Jurassic Park. It's different, but it's not the real Jurassic Park. For me, the Neverending Story is the movie. So reading this book was interesting. Not all of the differences were bad. Some are not that good, but we'll get into that. So here's what I'm going to do, because it is extremely difficult for me to talk about this book without comparing it to the movie, but I'm going to do my best. We're going to start with just a normal book review. Talk about the book as it is, just the book. Then, when we go into the spoiler section, we'll go into details about the movie are inevitably going to creep in. So the book, The Neverending Story, what is it about? We ride along with a boy named Bastian. He is 12, 13-ish. He's pale. He's overweight. Not a lot of friends, if any. His mom passed away recently, like within the past year. And since then, his dad has become a shell of his former self, to the point it talks about them being at home, and when they watch TV, Bastian sees his dad isn't watching TV. He's kind of looking past the TV. When they sit in their different chairs reading books, he can see his dad. His dad isn't reading. He's just staring at the book, never turning a page. So Bastian is very much alone in this world now. He gets picked on at school. His only escape is books, fantasies, worlds that he can jump into and forget about who he is, what his life has become. And he has a huge imagination, even to the point it talks about him to anyone who will listen at school. There's this girl he will tell stories to, just make up stories off the top of his head and tell her stories. He just loves anything that gets him away from his current life. So when the book begins, he's walking to school in his town, and the bullies see him and they start chasing after him. Well, he hides away in a little bookshop so they can't find him. But while he's in there, there's some old guy in the back. He's like, "Get out of here, kids. Like, we don't sell books to kids. You wouldn't know what to do with a book if it hit you in the face." And they start talking, and he talks about, I love books, and talking about life. Well, as they're talking, Bastian sees this book on this guy's desk with this symbol of two intertwined snakes, with the head of one eating the tail of the other. And as they're talking, it just keeps calling to him. It's pulling towards him. Well, this guy gets a phone call, the shop owner. He gets up, goes to get the phone. Bastian nabs the book and runs off. What's the name of the book? The Neverending Story. So he runs off to school. By the time he gets to school, it's too late. Class has started. And instead of dealing with the embarrassment of walking into class late, he takes his new treasure, his book. He goes up into the attic and starts reading the book. This is where we transition to the story within the story, the book he's reading, The Neverending Story. Now, this book is about a world called Fantastica. The ruler is a young girl, the childlike empress. And she's not so much as like a ruler that makes laws or tells people what to do. She's just like the all-powerful one. She's just the figurehead, but she does have powers that nobody else has. Well, she's sick. And while she's been sick, this something, or should I say, it's literally called the Nothing, has been coming across the land, devouring the world of Fantastica, literally leaving nothing behind it. The world just is disappearing in this cloud of nothing. So the childlike empress, she calls forth someone to not only find a cure for her, but help find a way to fight the nothing. And this person is called Atreyu. And he's just a 10-year-old boy. Well, this 10-year-old boy sets off on a quest to find a cure for the Empress and to fight the nothing. Now, as the journey goes along and as Bastian is reading this book about this boy hero, we start getting drips about how it's like, oh man, this boy in the story is who I want to be. He's thin with olive skin, black hair, he's fearless, and look at me, I'm pale and chubby, and there's a part of me so bad that wishes I could be him. Well, as the story progresses, Bastian starts to realize that he's not only reading the story, he is a part of the story. And although Atreyu is going to go through and do all the adventures and do the hard stuff, Bastian has a role to play in the story as we get closer and closer to the end. Now that is the first movie, and that is the first third of the book. The climax and resolution of Atreyu, this young 10-year-old boy in the story, how he saves the childlike Empress and they work together to fight the nothing. That's the first third of the book, and that's the first movie. The second half of the book, or second 2/3, is really Bastian's story. Because like I said, Bastian has a part. I won't go too far into it, but somehow there's a connection between him and what he's reading. The mysterious power of this book. Well, all these things Bastian has been wanting, dreaming of, he gets in the second half of the book. And the second half is really about, it's kind of like a cautionary tale of getting what you wish for. And it's really about how power corrupts, fame corrupts, leads to arrogance, burning bridges. And it's really Bastian dealing with getting everything you want, but at what cost? And that's where I'll leave it. If you have not read the book and you want to, I'm going to leave it there. I will say the first third of the book is the first movie. The second half of the book is the second movie. And this book is written, let me tell you about the style. It's very childish how it's written. It's very fast-paced. Like there's people just go along, there's a problem, and it's almost immediately solved within the same page. There's nothing deep to think about or to no deep details about things. It's just go here, problem, fixed. If there's any ramifications or loose ends, don't worry, it's just solved because of blah, 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 blah. It reminded me a little bit of The Hobbit, where they would get into a pickle. It's like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Don't worry, Gandalf's here. Pew, pew. Okay, everything's good. See you later. That kind of stuff where it's just like, oh no, don't worry. Poof, move on. So it's very fast-paced. There's not a lot of thinking to do. It's very surface level stuff. Which was fine for me for the first third where it's following the movie because I'm just visualizing the movie in my head. But when you get to like the middle third, it gets kind of like, okay, this is a little bit cheesy, a little bit too childish. Towards the end, it gets better. First third, great. Middle third, meh. Last third, good. Again. And the last third, I will say the message it had for Bastian and what you can take on as the reader was pretty good. And it kind of made me think about some things in my own life. Not that I'm powerful or famous and getting full of myself. 59 subscribers, woohoo. So yeah, if you can handle that kind of childish, simple storytelling, perhaps you'll enjoy it. I would suggest just watching the first movie because also the first third with Atreyu trying to fight the nothing, there is a villain, a dark presence that's following him. And the climax between those two is so much better in the movie. Honestly, the end of that part in the book is so anticlimactic. I was so looking forward to it the whole time I'm reading. Like, we're going to get this moment between Atreyu and the villain. And then in the book, it falls so flat. And it's disappointing. But in the movie, it's awesome. So that's where I'm going to end it for no spoilers. If you want to read it, go for it. I think you'll like the movie a whole lot better. Yeah, it's 1984, but there's no, cheesy CG. Man, I still love it. I still love it. I watched it a couple weeks ago, and that's what made me read this book. I watched it, I'm like, it just feels good. It looks good. The tense moments are still tense all these years later. Go watch the movie. Go watch the movie. And I had thrown away the second movie for so long. I've maybe seen that one 5, 10 times in my life, and I always just thought it was some stupid, weird offshoot that's just too weird. But then reading this, I'm like, oh, it's just the second half of the book. Okay, maybe I'll give it another go. But anywho, we're going to jump into spoilers. So, spoiler time. Leave if you haven't read or watched the movie. Like and subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. Spoiler time, spoiler time. All right, let's get into it. Now, here's what I'm going to do. For those of you who have watched the movies but not read the book, let me just go through some of the differences. The main story is the same from the first. We're going to start obviously with the first movie because that's the first third of the book. First and foremost, Artax, the horse, it talks. Now, it doesn't talk a lot, but he talks. And as soon as he started talking, I was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Which it would have been too cheesy for them to throw that in the movie. That would have been weird. But it does kind of give you a little more understanding, I guess, of his mindset in the swamps of sadness. Because, they're walking through and it talks about, even before they go in there, he's kind of like, are you sure we should go in there? He's like, I'm not so sure about this. So he's already having doubts when they go in there. So they start wandering through, and it talks about the few times he kind of stops and sinks a little, but Atreyu kind of like pulls it, come on, come on, come on, come on. And you see that in the movie, I think once or twice, he kind of stops and has to pull him out. But he's talking, not constantly, but enough where he's like, I'm just not sure about this. And eventually when he does stop, when we get that big moment in the movie, and he's like, come on, boys, like, what's wrong? And he says something like, I would rather die than feel this feeling of sadness anymore. I don't want to feel what I'm feeling anymore. I'd rather die. And that's why he stopped. And Atreyu is like, I don't feel anything. What's wrong? He's like, because you, Atreyu, you are wearing the Orin. Remember that symbol, the two snakes? Because Atreyu is wearing that symbol, he's unaffected by the sadness. And in the book, Artax tells him, just leave me, leave me. I don't want you to watch me die. And so in the book, Atreyu does. He walks away and leaves him. Whereas in the movie, right, he sits there holding the reins. And we get that yell, that cry of anguish in the music. It's such a great moment. So that's a little change I didn't care for. He just left and walked away. And again, since things are happening so fast in this book, it's kind of happens pretty quickly. And you're like, oh, we didn't get that big sad moment. It's not like the movie. What else? Oh, I skipped over the dude who comes out in the ivory tower, who is making the speech to everyone and who says, we're looking for Atreyu, and Atreyu comes walking up. In the book, he is a centaur. And he actually has to go running to the Green Plains or wherever and find Atreyu. He just runs. I think he says he runs for 10 days. He gets there. He's like, I'm looking for Atreyu. I need to find Atreyu. And he's already out on a hunt. They have to bring him in from the hunt, and he's all ticked off about that. And so he's like, and just like the movie, he's like, this is Atreyu? He's like, surely there must be a man. He's like, I think we don't want a 10-year-old boy. He can't be the warrior. And he almost turned around and left. He's like, surely the Empress made a mistake. But then he's like, no, okay. Listen, boy, if you're the only Atreyu, you can choose. The Empress, she's not going to make you do it. But if you want to, you can. If you don't want to, and I hope you don't want to so we can find somebody else. But of course, Atreyu says, I will do it. He has to leave behind his bow and arrow and all weapons and go off. That's when they get to the Swamps of Sadness. They do, at the first, they don't know that it's the Nothing in the book. And Atreyu, he comes across these, what are they called? Like bark trolls? Basically like tree monsters. And they have like holes in them. Like a hole through the center, a hole in its branch. I think one maybe has one leg. And that's because they touched the Nothing. And when you touch the Nothing, it's like imagine your hand going into a hole, and when you pull it out, your hand is just gone. It's just seared right off. Whatever it touches, it's gone. So that's how he learns what the Nothing is. Swamps of Sadness. Morla In the book, it's called Tortoise Shell Mountain, whereas in the movie, it's just called Shell Mountain. But as he's talking to Morla, let me get to the Morla part because there's a bit of different things. Morla in the book actually tells Atreyu that the Empress needs a new name. She knows that. And she is still having like multiple personality. She even calls the other personality like old woman. It's like, oh, the old woman doesn't care. What do you think, old woman? Um, so it just tells them maybe you have to go talk to the Southern Oracle, which is not 10,000 miles away. It's a 10,000 day trip away in the book. And we still get Gamork, who pops up here and there just a little bit. They just kind of mention as Atreyu and Artax go away, there's this black presence in the shape of a wolf chasing after them. And in the book, they actually walk out, or only Atreyu walks out of the swamps. Okay, how's he going to get there? He doesn't know. He's got to find a way. 10,000 day trip, but he just keeps on going. He goes to this place that ends up like a mountainous place. He comes to this giant crevice, and down in the crevice, he hears this like roaring and howling sound. He looks down, and there's this giant white dragon thing caught in like a spider web. And it's caught in there, and it's roaring, and it's twisting. And then he sees this giant beetle-looking thing moving down towards it. And this dragon stuck in this web is fighting off this beetle, which is changing shape. And it's like a shape-shifting thing because it's actually made up of like thousands of tiny little beetle things. So it can change to a spider, to a scorpion, to whatever. And so that's obviously Falkor. And this is where the part where I said how problems arise and then just poof are magically resolved. Because Atreyu has the Orin, and he tells this beetle thing, I have the Orin, it's the word of the Empress, you must listen to me. And while the beetle thing is like, okay, yeah, you have the power, but the nothing's coming, let me just have one more meal. I don't really care about what the Empress says or anything. But it turns out if this thing bites you, you get this poison inside of you, and which is going to kill you in 1 hour, but it allows you to teleport to anywhere in Fantastica that you want to go. So Atreyu lets this thing bite him. Poof, I want to go to the Southern Oracle. And then poof, magically Falkor is there too. He's like, oh, wait a minute, how did that happen? He's like, well, I overheard the monster tell you that you could teleport anywhere, so I just teleported here too with you. He's like, yeah, but why'd you follow me? He's like, because you're the one who rescued me. I wouldn't know this without you, and I've got luck. So we do meet the two old people, and let me see here. This is where things start to get a little different too. The two sphinxes in the book, their eyes are open and they're staring at each other. And in order to pass, I forget what exactly it said. You had to like clear your thoughts or clear your mind or whatever. Something about that. It's not, whatever it is, clearing your mind, believing in yourself. But in order for you to pass, the two sphinxes have to close their eyes. When they close their eyes, you can pass through. Whereas in the movie, their eyes are already closed and it opens. So it goes through. Then you do get to the mirror gate. But the weird thing is, when he passes through the first gate with the two sphinxes, he kind of forgets a lot about who he is, where he's from, why he's there. Because the mirror, it's the same as the movie. You're going to see your true self in the reflection. And of course, he goes up there, he sees Bastian. But you have to like clear your mind to be able to walk through. But because when he walked through the first gate, he already kind of like forgot a lot about who he was and what he's doing. He kind of looks at the reflection and he's like, oh, that's weird, and just walks through him. Again, the third gate, this is different. The third gate is just another gate you have to walk through. And again, you have to forget all purpose, clear your mind. Again, he's already done that because what happened after walking through the first gate was that this happened to his mind. So the third gate's just like, oh, walk right through. The fourth part is where you meet the Southern Oracle. And in the book, it's just a floating voice. There's like marble, tiled ground with columns and a roofless temple kind of thing. And the Oracle is just a voice that's floating around. And without going into too much detail, it tells that you, oh my goodness, again, you have to have a new name, and that a human, this is where he learns a human has to do it. It's like, how does a human get into Fantastica? And then da 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 da. We'll get to the part now, because he falls off Falcor, just like the movie. He falls off, but he shows up in this city where Gamork is chained up and starving and nearly dead. And this is where I read it. It's like, oh. And he's a werewolf. He's a werewolf. He's not just a normal wolf. He's a werewolf who he can freely go from the human world to Fantastica. But they've got him chained up. They chained him up. This is such a lame part of the book. They chained him up, the sorceress who told him to go chase after Atreyu. She realized that if Gamork killed Atreyu, the Nothing would win and destroy the world. And the sorceress realized, oh crap, if it destroys the world, that means it's going to destroy me too. So she chained up Gamork. We're like, never mind. And you're like, what? And then I think if I remember right, the sorceress and her minions end up just like walking into the Nothing anyways. So Gamork is just chained there while the Nothing is closing in. So Atreyu is there talking to him, and because he tells the story, and the Nothing is coming in, and we don't get that awesome speech from the movie, right? That awesome speech in the movie, Gamork talking about people with no hopes or whatever are easier to control. But finally, Atreyu, he's like, I was sent to kill this boy named Atreyu, and Atreyu finally says, come for me, Gamork, I am Atreyu. And in the book, he's chained up, and he just kind of looks up and he kind of goes, and he just dies. He finally realizes his whole purpose and point is for nothing, because here it is. The boy walked right into his lap, and it's meaningless now. So bleh, he just dies. Lame. Now this, I read all this, and this is the first movie, right? I read all this really quickly, really interesting, good stuff to compare to the movie. This is where the book gets weird, because you get the stuff where Atreyu goes back to the childlike empress. They start talking about Bastion. He doesn't know what to do. And this is where stuff gets weird, because in the movie, right, in the Ivory Tower, he calls out her name. But in the book, Bastion is too afraid to do it. He doesn't have the strength. Mostly it seems because he is overweight and pale, and he's still an adolescent, and he's afraid that if he says the name and he gets transported into Fantastica, they're going to see him and laugh at him. That's what a child would think, right? I don't want to show up in front of these people. They're going to laugh at me. Even though I'm pretty sure, I can save their world, they're going to laugh at me because of how I look and how I act. So the childlike empress, who's sick and dying, somehow has enough energy to go off, and she has to meet this guy in this tower. She goes off on her own journey now to meet this guy in a tower, and it happens pretty quickly. And this guy is actually the author of the Neverending Story. He's writing down all this stuff that's happening. And so even when she shows up and when she talks to him, he's writing down what she says. And when he answers, he has to write down his answer. So they're kind of stuck there. And the childlike empress, she's back at the Ivory Tower. She's trying to say things to let Bastion know it's him. He knows it's him. In fact, there's a funny line where Atreyu says, well, maybe he doesn't even know it's him. And she says, with all the clues he's been given, if to not know it's him, he'd have to be pretty stupid. But I guess he is, because she goes to this place. And so here's an interesting thing, and where, Neverending Story, she tells the author of the writer of the Neverending Story, she says, tell me the story again. And he's like, but if I tell you the story from the beginning, I'd have to write that down. And then I would just be writing down things that already happened. And then we'd get to this point, and I'd have to start writing it all over again. She's like, yeah, do it. And so it goes through, and it's like, the boy walked in or ran into the bookshop, and and that's where, and it goes in the book. It says he actually goes through and writes the whole story again. And that's when Bastion finally is like, crap, we're stuck in this loop until I give her a name. And that's when he cries out the name. And the name he gives her is Moonchild. Now, I remember in the movie, he opens up the window and he yells, and I've never known what he says. I always heard Moira, and I don't know if that's just like the X-Men and Professor X coming into my head or something. But I always say he was like, Moira! Did he say Moonchild in the movie? Surely not, huh? What about the second movie? For those of you who watched the second movie, is her name Moonchild? I don't know. But that's the name he gives her. I'm just like, okay, that's weird. So this is when, once he finally says the name, this is when we get the dark moment where she gives him that little grain in his hand. It's like, this is all that's left of Fantasia. And he's like, well, how do we bring it back? It's like, you make a wish. And you can, but how many wishes do I get? You get as many as you want. So this is where he learns, oh, all right, make a wish about this, da, 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 da. She gives him the Oran. So now he has the power of the Oran, which is like the power of giving all the wishes. And this is where the book gets weird. Because he kind of first, for whatever reason, this forest pops up and he's just thinking about this, and as he wants to like hack through the forest, he can do so with his hand with ease because whatever he thinks happens. And he kind of lives in this jungle, I think for like a week or even a month. And he's like, I'm Lord of the Jungle. And for him, it's perfect because now he's finally experiencing one of these fantasies that he's read about, dreamed about. He's not in his real world with all his problems, and he's loving it. He's loving it. After a while, he gets tired of the forest, and he walks away, and it becomes this desert. And he meets this lion with like a flaming mane. Talks to this lion, and the lion's like, I've been here for hundreds or thousands of years. And he's like, Bastion's like, how could you be here for so long? I just invented this with my mind. He's like, if you never read a book, does that mean that book doesn't exist? And just because you opened the page for the first time, that it's just now existing? And he's like, oh. So that's kind of a theme through like the second half. Like, kind of like if a tree falls in the forest and it doesn't make a sound. It's like, if you never open that book, does it truly exist? I mean, it exists, but just because you haven't read it means it doesn't exist. So that's kind of weird. Anywho, he does this stuff with the lion. He finds this place called like the 1,000 Doors, and he goes through all these doors. He gets to this place where we get to like the Silver City. And they're holding this tournament because Atreyu is there. Atreyu and Falcor are there. They're like, we need a champion because the savior of the world, Bastion, is out there somewhere. And we need to find the best people to be his bodyguards. So they're having a tournament to see who's the best. Atreyu and Bastion, I'd say reunite. They've only ever seen each other in that mirror. But they meet, become all buddy. They kind of going through things. And eventually, Atreyu and Falcor realize that, Bastion, every time you make a wish, you're creating all this stuff for this new Fantasia. Because he even like tells people a story of like the creation or creators of old Fantastica. And I said Fantasia because that's the movie. He's like, every time you make a wish, you're losing a part of yourself. Because they would be like, what was that girl's name in school you used to tell stories to? And he's like, girl? What girl? I never told stories to a girl. And they're like, you didn't? And so like Falcor and Atreyu are like, And that's the part that kind of clicked with me and like, wasn't that something in the second movie that happened? And I was like, oh, that's where they got it from. Okay. Then some other stuff happens, but then we get this point where they're out traveling around and these big black like spider soldier looking things come walking up and say that the sorceress wants to see him. And that's when it clicked. I'm like, oh, second movie. Those big black walkie thingies. And I think they refuse or something, but they start attacking these things. Somehow, some of their friends get captured, and they go to the sorceress's castle. That looks like a giant hand, and I can't remember in the movie if it looks like a hand. But I do remember Bastion climbing on the outside of something. And remember what he does? He makes a wish. He's like, I wish for another step. I wish for another handhold. I wish for another. It doesn't happen in the book. But that's when it really clicked for me. Like, this is the second movie. This is where it all comes from. Because we meet the sorceress, and even though she's sent those things out to kill them or capture them, and she captured some of their friends, as soon as he gets up there, she's like, oh, my Lord, now that you're here and I have laid eyes on you, your will is your whatever. I am yours to command. I am your slave. And she uses that word. I'm your slave. You are my Lord. And he's like, release my friends, and we're going to the ivory tower to talk to the childlike empress. She's like, yes, my Lord, whatever you wish, my Lord. And that's when we start getting into that journey to the ivory tower, where you start having the sorceress in Bastian's ear. And as things are going along, Atreyu keeps trying to warn him. He's like, Bastian, you're losing yourself. You need to stop doing that. You know what? Just, give the Orin to me. And Bastian is just slowly, he gets more and more short, more curt with him, until eventually he blows up and he's like, the Empress took this away from you and she gave it to me. She deemed it a better fit for me than you. So you sit down, be quiet, and do what I say. And eventually he even says, I'm tired. I'm sick of you. Get out of here. And he tells him to leave. Now Atreyu and Falkor, they don't leave. They kind of just stay at the back of the very long procession. They've kind of like gathered this army, or I forget what's going on there. They're marching to the ivory tower, but they learn the childlike empress is not there. It's like, oh my God, we came all this way. This is the whole point. We want the empress, and blah, blah, blah. And this is where the sorceress gets in his ear and is like, don't you see what's happened? She's left because she knows now you are the rightful ruler of Fantasia, of Fantastica. You have the Orin. She gave you the power. There's no more use for her. It's all you. And he starts going like, oh, okay, yeah. By this time, the power's getting to his head. It's been slowly building up. Because throughout, he's telling people, I have the Orin. Listen to me. And it's building to this point where now he's thinking, yeah, I that's right. She's gone. It's me. Now, he does go in and says, okay, we'll give her like 2 months, 3 months. If she doesn't show up, then give it to me. But we're at the point of like the coronation. And at this time, Atreyu knows this has to be stopped. He gets this big army. They come to the ivory tower. There's this big fight. Bastian stabs Atreyu in the chest. Falkor takes him away. And Bastian, he's just so incensed and furious. He goes chasing after them, riding this mechanical horse out into just chasing him down. And suddenly, this mechanical horse he's been riding, poof, explodes, disintegrates, doesn't disintegrate, explodes, because you can see the pieces everywhere. And he comes across this town with all these people acting real weird, wearing strange clothing. He tries to talk to them, and nobody can speak to him. And he learns this place, this whole village, all these people you see are the former emperors of Fantasia, or the former would-be emperors. There's a guy there, or a monkey he meets there, who starts telling him these stories, and he's like, what do you mean? You mean these are the people who stood where you stood? They made so many wishes that they didn't even have one single memory of their former self. And he's like, wait, these are all humans from the human world? It's like, if you wish yourself out of memories, if you wish that last wish, you're gone. The Orin will disappear. Even if you become emperor, too, that was another thing. If you make yourself emperor, the same thing happens. The Orin will, and you will turn into this. So now Bastian's like, crap. And he's like, how many wishes do I have? He's like, you have maybe 3, maybe 4 wishes left. This little monkey guy tells him. Now, you still got a journey to go on. You got to go across like the Misty Sea and find the something or other. And Bastian's just like, crap. So he just starts walking off. He can't wish himself anywhere because he's only got 3, maybe 4 wishes left. Walks off. The sorceress knows about this place. And when he runs off, he's like, crap, I can't let him find this place. So she chases after him. And this is so stupid. Man, the worst part about this book is that the village just dies stupid death. Gamork, total puss at the end. Just, whatever, chained up and starved to death. Then this lady, she's riding her black soldier spider things. She gets out and she gives them some command and they don't listen. and she puts herself in front of them to stop them if they just keep on walking, and they basically just trample her to death. You're like, okay, all right, whatever. And then a whole bunch of stuff happens. Eventually, they end up in this big room. Where does he end up? He ends up somewhere with the snow. He's lost in the snow. Atreyu and Falcor show up. This big chamber with the, what is it called? Water of life, with these two giant snakes, the ones from the book. And it's a gate. He has to go into the water, drink about it. What I found interesting, and something you always thought about watching the movie, that old guy who was reading the book, he's reading that book, and he's an old man, right? Much wiser and more knowledge than a child would. He must know what's going on with this book. Well, in the actual book, he has been to Fantasia before. He has been there, obviously didn't use all his wishes, and he found a way out. And so when Bastian comes back and he's like, sorry, sir, I stole your book. And he's like, what book? Because the book, when Bastian comes back to the real world, has disappeared. And he goes running in there and he's like, I'm sorry, I lost your book. And he's like, what book? Yeah, I never had a book like that. But slowly he's like, oh, so you were there. He's like, all right. So they kind of have this, it ends, the very end of the book is just kind of having this connection, being like, why don't you come around every so often? Let's talk about compare experiences. So there it is. Now, nice long video. I freaking love this movie. The book, it had its slow moments, because once I was so shocked, I'm like, at page 100, I'm like, the movie's about to end. What's going to go on? And I hadn't seen the second movie in so long and really remember so little of it. It wasn't until I was reading this book now that it started like filling in the gaps. I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So now, as soon as I record this and upload it, I'm going to go watch Neverending Story 2. Because I had always cast it off as some just stupid, cheesy joke of a movie. But now I see, oh, it's actually the second part of the book. But if you're still here, thank you. Maybe that means you're a Neverending Story freak like I am. Absolutely love it. Please do leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. If you're a fan of the movie, maybe give this book a try. Like I said, for me, the movie is the story, and this is like fan fiction. It's so sad to say, right? No, this is the actual story. No, the movie is the story. Please do comment down below. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. I'm going to go watch the second movie. See ya.